you very much for being here for our fourth annual Black History Month breakfast. I'm Chris Conway, President and CEO of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce. Each year, this gathering grows, not just in attendance, but in meaning and impact. Today's panel reflects that evolution. As you'll hear, each of our honored guests brings a deep history of stewardship and community involvement, while continuing to serve as active champions for inclusion, opportunity, and celebration across West Hartford. We are also grateful to have a strong civic partnership. I'd like to recognize Town Council members John Lyons and Lisa Lazarus, who are also joining us this morning. Today's program has been facilitated by the Chamber's Minority Business Network. Established in 2020, the MBNS exists to provide visibility, networking opportunities, and meaningful resources for Chamber members who are also members of underrepresented racial, ethnic, and religious populations. Its mission is simple and powerful: creating opportunities, strengthening connections, and expanding access to resources through their work. They increase the visibility of minority-owned businesses and represented businesses, provide a forum for discussions around the unique challenges faced by minority professionals, and strengthen the diversity of the overall Chamber membership. At this time, I'd like to ask members of the Minority Business Network Committee who are with us today to stand and be recognized. This event would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. Our presenting sponsor, Westfield Bank, our breakfast sponsors, Charter Technology Services, the collaboration of minority women professionals, and 628 Digital Design. And our host sponsor, West Hartford Fellowship Housing, who graciously stepped in when we needed to relocate this event. I'd like to invite Executive Director Mark Garilli to share a few words. Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me a minute to just share a little bit about West Hartford Fellowship Housing. We're West Hartford Fellowship Housing, and we're now WHFH Development Corporation. And, as we are the ones who are responsible for this mess outside behind you, so this time next year we'll have a real front door and it'll look a lot different if you're here again with us next year. But it really seems a bit surreal to look outside and think that that's what all of this looked like about 2 years ago. So think back 55 years ago, this nonprofit set out on a mission to provide affordable housing for seniors and adults with disabilities. Members of churches and synagogues came together because their congregations were aging, folks were running out of resources, and they felt they had a responsibility to support those members whose needs had begun to change. They approached the town, this property was secured, and a long-term solution was born. Over the years, the nonprofit had developed 3 times, establishing over 200 units of housing. Fast forward to today, our average age is 74. Over 60% of those folks earn $1,350 a month or less, and over 22% earn only $800 a month or less. Our average length of stay is about 15 years. Our rents range anywhere from $600 a month to $2,000 a month. We'll have over 300 units when we are done with development efforts in total. Our board set out to reinvent the mission with a purpose to preserve this solution, expand on the number of individuals we serve, provide an environment of independence and longevity, and ensure our folks are better connected to community-based services. We believe everyone deserves the comfort, dignity, and security of a home, and we are proud to call ourselves nonprofit developers. We're proud of the new efforts we've made to fundraise to bridge the gap for so many of our residents who are faced with difficult financial decisions every day. Thank you for this opportunity to share our story and our vision for the future. We hope you will share with someone else who will then pass it on. You know, we used to say we're the best kept secret in West Hartford. We have a goal to change that and share the important work that we do every day with anyone who's willing to listen. Thank you so much. Enjoy the day.
Before I introduce our presenting sponsor, I'd also like to recognize the members of the Chamber team who worked closely with the Minority Business Network to bring today's program. Our Director of Development and Programs, Kate Coves, and our Events and Communications Manager, Jen Frontiero. I'd now like to invite Matt Cuddy from Westfield Bank to come up and say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mike, for providing such a great facility here. My name is Matt Cuddy. I'm a regional manager with Westfield Bank. I support our locations in Western Massachusetts and Connecticut, including our spot right here in the center of town on Farmington Avenue. We are proud to continue to partner with the Chamber on the 4th annual Black History Month breakfast, presenting it to you. As a community bank, Westfield Bank supports the growth of communities by providing businesses, organizations, families, and individuals financial guidance and tools needed along their journeys. So please stop by 977 Farmington Avenue to meet with one of our community bankers. They'd love to meet you. Looking forward to this morning's engaging conversation with Chris and our panel of thoughtful and esteemed local community leaders. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Chris Clark, Chairperson of the Board of Directors and one of the founding members of the Minority Business Network. Chris is a financial advisor with Webster Bank. In his role, he is responsible for connecting high net worth individuals and institutions to strategies that can help them reach their financial goals. Apologize. You just got out of order. He graduated from Brooklyn College with a bachelor's degree in psychology. He also graduated from the University of Connecticut with a master's of business administration, concentrating in finance and management. A native of Brooklyn, New York, Chris began his financial services career in 1998. He relocated to the greater Hartford area in 2002 and joined Webster Bank in August of 2025. In his free time, Chris loves cooking. He is also a single dad who resides in West Hartford with his three daughters. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Chris Clark.
So we only have one mic floating around, so I'm going to be very loud. If I get too loud, let me know. If I'm not speaking loudly enough, let me know. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am super excited about this panel.
Check. Co-founder stepping in. Ladies and gentlemen, the Emperor Stephen King Jr. And I think that moment exemplifies exactly what the Minority Business Network is about. It's about each one of us stepping in to help each other out in situations that might be a little bit above our head, but more importantly, as a business community, help each other do more and better business. And with this panel in particular, I am super excited because it gives me an opportunity to sit down with people that I have genuinely called friends, people I genuinely enjoy, and Matt, even though it's our first formal time meeting, we got a lot of people in common. So this is going to be a relatively informal conversation with people who have a lot of connective tissue. You know, circling around the arts, circling around education, circling around civil service, and how all of these things combine to make West Hartford what it is, and how the members of the community of color, in particular the Black community, have come together to lend creating West Hartford and making it the town that we all love. So with that in mind, let's start with the most obvious piece of connective tissue for most people sitting here at the table, and that would be the MLK 39 project. And Matt, since that was kind of your baby, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you talk a bit about the project and how it came about.
Yeah, so it was a very organic blow up of a project. So shortly, and I speak loud, so maybe too loud with the mic, but on MLK Day 2021, we decided to just randomly do an MLK mural in Manchester. I had an artist go out there in one weekend and paint an MLK mural, just kind of like a surprise for the Manchester community. And after that mural went up, it was like an automatic, hey, how do we get one of those from a bunch of different towns? And so it just took off like fire, and now we've done over, the goal initially was 39 murals, one for every year of MLK's life, and we're at like 20 now across the state. Some towns actually have multiple ones, like East Hartford. So it's been an incredible project and honor to be a part of. And West Hartford in particular, they were the #2 community to sign up. And I met with Matt Hart and Sherry Cantor, and they immediately introduced me to Adrian, and we got working not only on the mural together, but also elevating what Juneteenth is and means to West Hartford. So Adrian is now my adopted big sister, and it's just been absolutely incredible journey. And like I said, an honor to honor these incredible women up on the wall as well.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that intersectionality, where you and Adrian came together, for those who don't know, affectionately known as ACE, right? How the two of you came together, started talking about this project, what it meant for West Hartford, and then how you selected what the mural would look like and who it would feature.
So for all these murals, I just step back, and it's really the community that drives the voice of them. So I handed that to Adrian, and so you can kind of go through that community input process. And
good morning, everyone. So great to be here. Thank you, Chris, first of all. When Matt found me, there was already a group of individuals who were doing work not only for Juneteenth, just what that could be. Matt stepped in and was a huge help and has been by my side ever since. But when he brought the mural project to us, we really wanted to tell a story, and that was a huge part of it, and you can see that on the wall in the center. And we wanted to go from past to present, and all the things that we've done. So when we made these decisions, there was a group about maybe 7 of us, I think. And we thought about what was important, the past, our history with Bristow, who was an enslaved individual, and West Hartford, who brought us freedom. We moved into the present, obviously, MLK is part of the past, and we chose Bernard, Lafayette, and Ella Baker, because they weren't well-known people in the civil rights movement for a lot of people, even though Ella Baker was the mother of the civil rights movement. And Bernard Lafayette had done some work here. We have the Violence Center that's out of Connecticut. We had done work with them, so it felt good to bring faces that people weren't familiar with. We also were in the middle of a turbulent time with deaths that were happening in the Black community and the Black trans community. So we wanted to do a piece of art that recognized folks who have been enslaved, folks who have been rise to violence, I should say. So that's out on our wall, so it's really visible and tangible. Then we got around to the front, and we wanted to show people who and what we were and who and what we could be. So having Judy Casperson, Tammy Exum, and Gertrude Plates, one of the first people to graduate, Black women to graduate from high school in West Hartford, someone who's well known in the community in Hartford, specifically in her story, saying, yes, we've gone through all of this, but here we are today, making these moves and making these strides to what equality and equity and representation looks like. And Carol was on council at the time. Carol was the first Black Board of Ed member, chair, who also served on council with me. So there's so much great history and things that are happening in West Hartford. We wanted to make sure that those were all showcased and lived for our children and our grandchildren and whoever comes next to see it on that wall.
I just want to say one more thing too. I believe Chuck was at that first meeting in Blueback Square too. So he was definitely
Chuck is always around.
Yeah.
Which is great for everyone. But you know, it takes a community to conceptualize something like this because there's so many parts to it, and just so grateful to have amazing mentors and people around to have a conversation, a real conversation about what this looks like.
And I'll just add one more powerful thing for this on a personal note. Because Dr. Lafayette was part of this, he's actually still alive today. And at the time, I think my daughter, she's 5 now, so she's 2 or 3, she was talking though. She got to FaceTime with Dr. Lafayette and actually have a conversation and listen to his story and meet him and his wife while virtual. And I hope that that is something that she's going to remember and impact her life forever as well. So the just generational impacts that these projects have, it's more than just art, you know, it's more than just painting on a wall. It's the process, it's the voice of the community that's now radiating from that wall for decades to come.
Thank you for sharing that. And please pardon me because I didn't go through everyone's bios, but I think it's important to have people taking a moment to
let's try this. Is better? So once again, I apologize I didn't go through the panelist bios, but I want to take an opportunity, and we'll start with Judy. So that Judy can tell you a little bit about who she is, what she's done, and also why it was important for her to be included in this group. So.
Good morning. So Judy Casperson moved to West Hartford in 2000, and I moved to West Hartford for the schools. I came to a community and I saw a love of learning, I saw a connected community in education, and I said, this is a place that I think we'd like to live, as my husband had retired from the military and we were settling down. Working in the banking community, I saw a great deal happening in West Hartford. I was on Main Street, started at Bank of America, which was Fleet at the time. But coming through, just seeing all the needs of the community while working on Main Street in West Hartford. And many people thought I was on the school board because I was so involved there, because education is key to so much of the future. It was for me growing up in Colorado. But through my volunteer work, people started noticing that I was very vocal for those who might not have a voice. And thinking about children and seniors, which is being in this place is an amazing thing today, for all of us to have this room, this building, this development coming to West Hartford. Speaks to a lot of the things that I was so passionate and still am very passionate about. But I was rowing on a boat with Sherry Cantor, and we were friends. She was one of the first people I met in West Hartford. And we developed a friendship that led to me getting more involved in council. I ran for council and wasn't thinking about history, right? I was thinking about how can I help my community, how can I get more involved, how can I help make change? Because I saw that when the local community got together and worked to create Blueback Square, I thought, if that's what a local government can do, sign me up. Because I knew that it was a growth engine for the community, and I knew that it was going to give my children a place to be involved in West Hartford and to not have to travel outside of West Hartford to live. So that's how I came to be on council. And keeping my head down and working hard, I've been involved and sit on many nonprofit boards and that sort of things. Just part of who I am, I guess. And I love the work, advocating for people. And so after 8 years on council, I stepped away to continue those works and have always been involved in banking and finance. Seen many wonderful people around the room that I've worked with. But when I stepped away, realizing that we had then networked to bring so many other people on board, I felt like having Carol and having Tammy and having Ace on the council and on the school board, I felt like we were in great hands. So when I stepped away, that's what I left, having that sort of legacy of starting something that caught fire, and we had lots of voices and representation in the community. And when I left, someone said, after I left the first year, said, well, how about, would it be okay if we recognized you on a mural? I said, sure. Sure. I thought, my name on a wall, great. And we didn't see it. Tammy and I didn't see anything. We saw nothing. We didn't see the renderings. And to see that is awe-inspiring. I mean, to be a part of that history, one of the first people in Colorado to be bused, knowing the history of Martin Luther King was amazing, having lived through a lot of that era. But one of the most amazing things I have to tell you right now is that I felt like it took me a long time to find a diverse community when I first came to West Hartford. And now when my granddaughters leave the library, they look up and they say, there's Oma. And that says a great deal.
Good morning. I'm Tammy Anderson. Wow. When I think back, there's so many memories and thoughts that come to mind. But I would say I moved here with my husband in 99 to West Hartford. We've actually been in Windsor. In 96, I was recruited by Otis Elevator Company. He was prime with me. And I didn't like Connecticut when I came here. Because it was really cold and there was a lot of snow. And so we moved to San Antonio for 2 years, came back, and I always spent my time in West Hartford. And I said, that was a really cute community. I'd love to live there. And we ended up moving here, had 2 little boys with us, and I was so glad we did because we didn't realize how wonderful the schools were. Before getting my MBA and being recruited, I was an elementary school teacher, and I was very involved in the schools with my children. And it was a fantastic experience. One of my children at the time was diagnosed with autism. And I was really nervous about what that looked like because I had no reference point. Rain Man was my only reference point, and that really wasn't an accurate one. And I ended up getting so involved in the schools and spending so much time there. But the boys were asked to go to 2 different schools. One had a program that was for children with special needs that was really great, and the other one was, Webster Hill. Webster Hill and Whiting Lane, they're both great schools, but they said, hey, he should go to Whiting Lane, the other should go to Webster Hill. And I said, wait a minute, they're a year apart in school. How do I do this? How do I drop one off and get the other one there? We're part of 2 communities, we're new to West Hartford, and they said, this is what we do. This is what we do, this is our policy with West Hartford Public Schools. And I was like, really? and I started meeting with other parents. I said, did you move when, you had children in a similar situation? And they had moved. Some had moved, some had children in 2 different schools, and I was like, this doesn't seem right. And long story short, we formed a group. We were encouraged not to because we couldn't get any place with the administration, and we decided to speak to the Board of Ed. So I was really, really scared. I had my 3 minutes and my little yellow sweater, I can remember right now, and I read this, this 3 minutes speech to the Board of Ed, and I remember Tom Fiorentino saying, this is a matter of equity. If we allow the siblings of children who are in magnet schools to attend together, why wouldn't we do the same for children with special needs? He says, when the children in magnet school attend together and get transportation. And then I had an aha moment because I found out it wasn't a policy, it was a practice. And there's a difference between a practice and a policy. And that started me going, wow, it was an aha moment. After that, I got more and more involved in the schools. I was asked to do a lot by the school system, and I enjoyed it. I just, I was an at-home mom, really trying to make sure my kids had what they needed. Their dad traveled a lot, was really busy, and I loved this community, and I kept being asked to do more and more, and I really enjoyed it. And then there came a point where I was asked to run for Board of Ed, and I was like, oh, no. I support people who run for things. I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. And then it took about 8 years. And I finally was leading a parent leadership training institute, VLTI, I love it. And there I go there, VLTI grad. I love it, and I kept saying, oh my goodness, I am telling these people to be parent leaders, and I'm not willing to step up myself. So I decided to run for the Board of Ed. And it was an amazing experience because it took me back to my roots as being a teacher, and also allowed me to make a really broad impact. I have 3 kids, very different needs, an entire spectrum from on the special education spectrum, I would say from gifted to needing, more specialized help. But it was wonderful. And after, and then Carol came on. Carol was the first African American chair. I was the first African American on the Board of Ed, but I was vice chair at the time. And it was a great experience. I rolled off, and during that time, there was a change in the state legislature. I was asked, someone called and said, Tammy, did we give you a call? Were you interested in me for state rep? And I left a message, no, thank you. And I couldn't find out. So I was a reluctant leader. But there's a reason I'm telling you this. And a part of it has to do with what we're seeing there. I ended up having a whole change of heart as things have changed within our community, our state, our country, and I ran for state rep in a special election in 2019. And I said at that time, this is special. I don't like it. I don't have to run again. And then COVID came, and I was all in. And I'm so grateful to be there now. One of the reasons, though, that I think this is important is 2 things. Number one is, I think I was a reluctant leader for running for office. I'd always been in leadership positions. My mother and father required it, so it was a part of my life. But I didn't see myself as a Board of Ed person. I see myself as a state rep because there wasn't one. So if you don't see yourself, sometimes it's hard to imagine yourself in those roles. And when you do imagine yourself in those roles, as someone who may be a first, the pressure of what that looks like and the expectations is real. And it means that you feel you have to be a model for everyone, that you have to show up just right all the time. And that's an important but difficult situation to be in, but it was one I was willing to go into. So when this mural came around, honestly, my first reaction was I was shocked. I was like, what? They're going to put my face on a wall? What? And then I remember Judy and I, we were at the Juneteenth, and we were debating, do we give comments or not? It's running kind of late. They wanted us to just kind of pop up there. And someone came to me and they said, Tammy, you must speak. This mural isn't about you. This mural is about what others can become. You must speak. And I went, got it. And it made me not feel like, oh my goodness, that's my face, but oh my goodness, that talks about the possibility. For people to see that possibility in me and in themselves is more than a little girl from Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina would ever have imagined. but it sets a trajectory for what you can become, and there's no limits. But seeing yourself up on a wall does inspire other people to say, if it can do it, I can do it too.
Good morning. I'm next. So my face is not on the mural. And my story is a little different in terms of how I came to West Hartford. So I'm originally from Hartford, born and raised, and I'm the daughter of Jamaican immigrants. And in fact, when my mother immigrated to Hartford, she actually ended up working for a Jewish woman, Ruth Diamond, whose family had a store on Park Street, Economy Fabrics. And she was a resident of West Hartford. And when the store closed in Hartford, they opened up another store in West Hartford, which was called 3D Bed and Bath. So if any of you out there remember Ruth Diamond and 3D Bed and Bath, that is where my family journey began. And I say that because of the climate where we are right now, with many immigrants who feel that they're at risk. And often I identify with many of them because I think about my parents. I think about my mom, who came to a country without having any family members here, just friends, and coming here because she was looking for an opportunity that was greater for her at that time than it was in Jamaica. And she was also thinking about her future of her children and an opportunity that was greater for them. So fast forward, I came to West Hartford for the education. I have 3 daughters, and at that particular time, my oldest daughter was attending St. Bridget Elementary School. And it's funny because as we would be transitioning from Hartford to West Hartford to bring her to school, she would make these little comments about the difference, because at that time Hartford was changing. And then eventually I was able to buy a home here and send her to school. And what was interesting was there were some changes that she observed as a 5th grader from moving from St. Bridget and attending Charter Oak at the time. And she'd come home with these different stories. One always being the only black girl in the classroom, and not many others, maybe one, if that, was another black child in that classroom with her. Most of the teachers didn't look like her. Administration didn't look like her. And so that went on. And then I have 2 younger daughters who then came along, and the story was the same. And apart from that, I was active in town. I was part of the PTO, I was part of the town committee. When anybody looked for a volunteer, they'd call Carol, and I'd always graciously accepted. But one thing that kept ringing true with my daughters was this feeling of either weirdness or just not feeling like they were comfortable in their setting. And that bothered me. So when I became active in the PTO and participated and observed different things, I began to resonate, because sometimes your children come home with stories and you're saying to them, did that really happen? Yes, it sounds like you're exaggerating. And it's only when you get involved you begin to have that aha moment, or you begin to say, And so there's one thing about kind of sitting back or sitting on the sidelines and making comments or having conversation with others. After a while, you have to say to yourself, okay, I gotta get involved, right? If I don't get involved and make a change, when will the change come? And how do you bring others along with you if you're not willing to step in and to step up? So my journey began from the PTO, and then I was asked a number of times, you'd be a good fit for the Board of Ed. And I said, well, how much time does that take? How long are the meetings? And when they told me how long the meetings ran, I said, okay, I need to kind of pause and wait a little while, because what's important for me are my children, because many of you out there who have children, we all know that that time flies. And so it's important that you're present during those youthful years. And so that's what I did. And then when I was ready to join the board, I did, because now I can give the time and commitment that is needed, because I don't go into anything without being prepared and being willing to give it my all. And so I did that, and that's where I met Representative Exum and Dr. Velasquez, and I'm proud of the work that we did. And what really I think brought home for me is the change in staffing and administration. And many more kids that were black and brown were able to see themselves in teachers or administration, and was feeling very comfortable if they had issues, that they had somebody that they could go to. They had somebody who could advocate for them in school before the information get back home to the parents, right? And that's important. A lot of times we have to listen to our children, because things happen at school and it can be misconstrued. And unfortunately, some of our children can receive labels, and those labels can follow them throughout that youthful time into adulthood. And many times we don't realize that until after they become adults. And then they tell you these stories and you'll say, wow, that happened? Why didn't you tell me? Well, I was afraid, or this, or that, or something. So I say that to everyone out there. If a child tells you something, listen and try to get more information. Pursue it a little further. Fast forward from the Board of Ed, I joined the town council. And it's interesting because it was at a time when the board was going through some challenging changes, if you will. So an issue had come up. Some people thought it was a good idea, others didn't, and it became really turbulent. So again, going back to what Representative Exum as well as Judy Casperson said, when you are a leader, it can't be about you. It has to be about everybody, because you're representing the whole. It's not a personal issue for you that you are trying to push through. And you have to consider everyone who is reaching out to you, who's trying to contact you, communicate with you. And that's a little bit of pressure on leaders, because when someone calls or emails, they're expecting a quick turnaround. But at the same time, you have your own personal stuff that you're trying to navigate as well. So what I've learned throughout all of this, and also in my years of work, even if you just respond back to let somebody know that I received your information and I will get back to you within a period of time, that's respectful. So fast forward, I joined the council. And what's interesting about joining the council is that was 2019. And so right after being sworn in, that was all of the uptake about COVID, right? So that was so challenging, because I was like, oh my God, now we're meeting virtually on Zoom, and I was trying to navigate that, and that was so, a lot of pressure, because you know that you are on camera, you're in front of the public, you're trying to be professional, and you're trying to be prepared, and you're trying to figure out whether or not your mic is on, is your camera on. So that was a challenging time. And I know it wasn't just for us, it was for everybody, but when you are in that position, you feel it's on you. You've got to do everything right because you're representing. One of the pivotal things that I am very proud about is when the police accountability bill came out, and that was through all the turbulence that we were all experiencing as a country around George Floyd and the whole incident that occurred, okay? That affected the black population personally. And I'm saying that because many black people and brown have experienced, maybe it didn't go as far as what happened to George Floyd, but many of us have experienced that. And I say that because right here in West Hartford, when I was a teen and there were other teens around, you did not want to drive through West Hartford at that time because you were afraid of being pulled over. If you were pulled over, you weren't sure what was going to happen. So if you were pulled over, you were automatically nervous. And you have an officer approaching the car, and your parents, you're a black child, you know the talk that your parents gave you about what to do when you were pulled over by an officer. And when that happened to George Floyd, and when the police accountability bill went through, and our town was now charged with creating a civilian police review board, and I was chair of the public safety committee at that time, I was very proud to work with Mayor Cantor in terms of selecting the people who was going to be on that board. And as a result of that board and what has happened now in West Hartford, I'm very proud of the progress and what we've done. Okay, and that board is also chaired by Olinda Morales. So if you don't get involved, if you just sit on the sidelines, you can't really complain, okay? You have to get involved. You have to be a change agent. And I'm gonna leave it right there.
So thank you for providing that perspective, Carol. So there are a couple of things that I noticed that we all share on this panel, right? We're parents. It seems that a lot of the leadership roles that we've come into kind of been voluntold versus, to paraphrase, leadership chose me, I didn't choose leadership, right? It was a thing where you saw a need and said, I've got to step in. But the impetus for all of this, right, whether it was relocating, whether it was joining the Board of Ed or the PTO or the Town Council, it seems to be our kids. Right? It seems to be the need to see equity for our kids, or a future for our kids, or opportunity for our kids. Right? And I often say that, kind of paraphrasing something you said earlier, is in order to be a thing, you have to see a thing or conceive a thing. Right? And I often say that we choose our paths based on either seeing somebody who we respect or admire or kind of looks like us going down a path, or we look at the landscape of the world and we go, something needs to be done here. And I'm not sure what it is, but something needs to be done. And it seems like collectively, that's what you've all done. You've looked at the landscape, you said, this ain't right. I gotta fix this. And as we're sharing these kinds of situations, I think about how things come full circle, especially with you, Tim, right? Because if you think about it, with the Minority Business Network, you were present for one of our first ever events. And that was your second day on the job? Do you want to share a little bit about that? Oh. So I'll share one. Many moons ago, not that long, about 5 years. The Minority Business Network, we had, on the heels of some other events that we had done for other organizations, decided to create something called Colorful Conversations, in which we got together, very similar to this, a panel of experts and a panel of concerned people to talk about things that impact communities of color. And considering that we had just had an election, and we were having a new administration sworn into office, we thought that it made sense to have elected officials talk about the impact of the election on communities. So the event was January 7th, and Tammy got sworn into office on January 6th.
That was 2021, I came in originally in 2019.
Oh, originally 2019 you came in, but like,
Yes.
when you actually had to run for office, 2021.
That's right.
And so Tammy gets sworn in. She's been on the job because you had the special election. But the second day, she's here with us, and the day prior was the insurrection at the Capitol. If you guys are interested in the conversation that took place on the tail end of that, it's available on the Chamber's website and the Chamber's YouTube. Go check it out. It's probably worth watching. But once again, talking about the idea of things coming full circle, talking about the idea of kind of being put into a situation where you have to make a choice and step up. That was our MBN, Minority Business Network, first experience of Tammy Exum stepping up, and I want to address the fact that she's going to be stepping down shortly. And I told her I'm not going to cry, but I did want to address that in front of her. So, did you want to say a couple words about that?
The decision to step down has been one that I've considered for some time. It was not a decision that was made lightly or easily. As many of you know, I lost my husband very suddenly on October 1st, 2023. And it changed my life profoundly, our lives, my family's lives. I would argue the life of the community even. He was a very involved person. And, but I was given advice at that time, everything has changed, so why would you change anything else when it comes to what you're doing as far as being an elected official? But there were also things that I really deeply cared about, and those things, I think, are what saved me, aside from my kids. And one of those things is children's behavioral health, and going back to the pivotal time around COVID. And we had children in the emergency rooms, and they were lined up in the hallways. And these were articles that were coming out, and people started to pay attention, and they were like, what is happening with their children? And at the same time, we were having an experience with a loved one that, once again, when you learn the journey of your children, and you're right, that is a very big point, the things you experience. And if you're experiencing it with your family, your child, other people are as well. It led me to a very deep dive of what do we do in this state around children's behavioral health, and how can we make systems and structures better? Because the experience we had literally led us to Colorado for 3 months, and it was brutal. The benefit of that horrific experience was that it shed a light on for me, to see where we had lack. And I was also in a position where I could make an impact. So I started, the Speaker of the House said to me, hey, I want us to write a children's behavioral health bill together. And then he said, off with it, Tammy. And I pulled together like a little bipartisan committee, and maybe 5 or 6 people. And we put our heads down, and I wrote, and really, 2 of us really wrote the bulk of the legislation, which ended up being 73 sections. It was our biggest piece of legislation, and passed in 2022. No one, Republican, Democrat, there were no votes. It passed unanimously in the House, the Senate, the governor signed it. We got $300 million, and we have been working ever since. Started a committee at the end that's called Transforming Children's Behavioral Health Policy and Planning Committee, and I call it TCB for Taking Care of Business, because the other part's too many words too. And it saved me, in addition to saving kids, because I wanted to go back. It wasn't solid enough yet for someone to step away. So between that and learning that my husband died from a massive heart attack called a widowmaker, and he had no real signs or anything, and he was a healthy person, so much so that that's the first thing the coroner said, like, I don't get this, he's so healthy. And then he told me about his heart. he asked me about a test. He says, hey, have you ever heard this test called a coronary calcium scan? I said, no, and I'm like, why are you telling me this right now? But it was something my brain could hold on to. And he said, if he'd had this coronary calcium scan, they would have known about this blockage. He said, you know, insurance companies don't cover this test. It's not expensive. It's about $150. It takes 3 to 5 minutes, and people don't know about it. And your husband should not be dead. And I was like, what? Tell me, you know, and I just kept talking to him about this test. And so I just started learning about it, and then I had the chief cardiologist at Stanford Hospital reached out to me, and he said, I hear you're working on coronary calcium scans. I said, I'm trying to understand what this is and help me. He said, I'm going to help you. He's going to partner with me. And together, we were able to, I was able to learn about it. We passed legislation. We can't cover it in everyone's health insurance because some of these are employer, some of these are federal, but for state plans, they are now covered. The coronary calcium scan tests are covered. I wanted to come back to work on that too. So there were things that because to me, this is about saving lives. I work on a ton of stuff that's important, but kids, behavioral health, looking at the spectrum there, looking at what we need to do around, you know, employment opportunities, but looking at how to help people save lives. You're going to pay for a stent or open heart surgery, but you won't cover a test that can save people's lives and give them an indication. So it was a calling to me to come back. But then, as we were off session and I started to reflect, I do feel very strongly led to continue that work, but a little bit differently. I want to really dig in. I'd like to start a foundation around this and really go around and teach people this work. I will stay involved in kids' behavioral health, but I know it's time. I have peace in my soul. I can make a really good decision now. And West Hartford and Avon, they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. We have such an amazing delegation. Whoever is to come, we have workers. West Hartford has really fantastic representation. So it is difficult for me. I leave a bit of it as an act of faith. I do have great opportunities, but I know I need to sit in it. But one thing my nephew said to me when he heard about it, he says, you know, Aunt Tammy, 7, which is 7 years I love served, he said, 7 is the number of completion biblically. And I said, And then I was with a girlfriend who's very biblically connected on Monday, and she said, and Tammy, 8 is the number of new beginnings. So I said, okay, I'm going to take this on faith. I'm going to miss it. It's been the greatest honor for people to entrust me, 25,000 approximately people to trust me to represent them. It has been incredible, but I know it's time to move on.
So, thank you for sharing that, Tammy, and thank you for your service to our community. You're greatly appreciated, and I appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing in all the things that you touch. I will say that personally, your work has changed my life. Ooh. I said I was in the crowd. Ace, I'm going to pick on you again. So, Juneteenth, as I will say personally, growing up in New York, Juneteenth was not a big thing. I don't think I had heard of Juneteenth until I had moved to Connecticut. And, you know, in one of my previous lives, I led the Black professional group for one of the local banks. And we put on a Juneteenth event. And it was transformative, and it was education, because many people, even Black people, had no idea what Juneteenth is and what the significance was. So I would love to turn it over to you to share a little bit about, number one, the significance of the holiday, and secondly, how West Hartford's Juneteenth events came to be.
Thank you. So how West Hartford's Juneteenth came to be. Majority of people know Juneteenth by this point, right? about it, the background of it. If you don't, it's a big thing now. But how West Hartford came to be, like most everyone else up here, I was minding my black business, and I was trying to raise my children and go to work, and George Floyd happens, this happens, and it was just like we couldn't catch a break, and everybody was so upset, and everybody was so angry, and everyone was lost, and everyone was looking for community, and we were inside our houses, and and I was just like, we just need a moment of joy. So I emailed the entire town council, the board of ed, and I was just talking about everything. I put Juneteenth in there, I put George Floyd in there, I said y'all not doing nothing, and then I ended up serving on council. So anyway, I brought it up, and within a week, so I brought it up. I said we need to say something because Black people are suffering, and I'm so tired of us having to continue to be traumatized each and every day. There is something, and it's coming in. It's Juneteenth, and I explained what it is, and I think Carol wrote me back, and Liam wrote me back, and it was like really quick. So then they sent me to Earl. That's the first person there. Like, you need to go talk to Earl Exum and Tracy Wilson. I was like, who are these people? Like, I don't know these people. Anyway, so we all get together and we're going back and forth about what this proclamation, it started as just a proclamation, just a recognition, back and forth, and we're bringing all of our experiences. Tracy's bringing this historical experience, we've got to do this and name these people. Earl's bringing his experiences, I'm bringing my experiences. I'm from the South, by the way. I moved to West Hartford in 2013. Yeah, because Russell was born in 2013. So I'm from the South, so I'm like, Tammy's also from the South. And so we're like going back and forth, and in 5 days, we get this proclamation put together, and we're on now Unity Green, formerly Goodman Green. So we're on Unity Green. People show up, people have to come out of their homes. It was amazing to see the amount of people who came out of their homes with their masks because they felt the same way that I felt in that moment. We needed community. So that happened, then the mural happened, but so many things came out of just writing an email of frustration. I bring up Unity Green because Unity Green was named Goodman Green, who was someone who had enslaved someone sitting in the middle of our town. And that became a thing where I go, so we're gonna sit here and act like this doesn't exist when there are articles written on it. So that became a community discussion. So I say all of that, and if Juneteenth is a great event, we're going on our 6th year now, Matt comes in, that's like whatever I can do to help you. And now it's turn, I'm biased, it's the best in the state. It's turned into something that people look forward to every year because it started with the word joy. It started with jubilation, the whole meaning of it. And people come and expect that, and that's what it'll continue to be. But I want to say, because I'm going to go back to Carol, West Hartford was a blind move for me. I didn't know if it had a great educational system. Honestly, I lucked out. I just knew I didn't want to be in Florida any longer for my own personal reasons. But when Carol talks about her experiences as someone who lived in Hartford and coming through West Hartford and being afraid and still choosing to live here, but being afraid because you didn't know, till now when you can speak to your leaders and say something is not right, and you have people like Judy, Carol, Tammy, Lisa sitting there going, I hear you, I see you, and we're gonna get this done, those things matter. Having people who know your lived experience or have their own and can are parallel to matter. So Juneteenth doesn't happen without Carol writing me back. Goodman Green turned into Unity Green doesn't happen without our leadership calling me back and going, this isn't right, so let's make sure we get it right. And that's who West Hartford has become. And there's still plenty of room for growth. But that's what you're looking for when you're looking for a community who's willing to acknowledge and grow. And that's why Juneteenth continues on 6 years later. That's why we're having these conversations, the Minority Business Network. Those things are important so that we see each other, so we can be something and be together in it.
I'm actually going to pass this right back to you, Carol, because on the tail of the comments that you shared regarding Juneteenth, something that's very important to the people of the diaspora, right, is celebration and jubilation, right? If you look at it, how many of us ended up here on this soil wasn't necessarily by choice, right? And the common experience of people of color, of any color, but particularly Black people of color in the United States, has been one of frustrations and sadness and troubles. But there's also immense joy. And I would challenge anyone to find places that experience joy and express joy as much as the Caribbean. I'm a little biased. So can you talk to us a little bit about the Caribbean Heritage Month celebrations that we had in West Hartford?
Absolutely. And thank you, Chris. So we decided, and it's a small committee, and we're still looking for people who are interested in joining. How would we celebrate our contributions as Caribbean Americans or Caribbean people who immigrated to this country, and in particular to West Hartford over the years, a number of years. In fact, I want to say Hartford is either the third largest for the Caribbean community, and as many of you know, West Hartford was the Western Division of Hartford, way back when. And it's funny because the relationship of Hartford residents and West Hartford residents go back a number of years. When many of the immigrants came to the U.S., many started off in either Florida, New York, and then they made their way over to Connecticut. And they did a lot of work, whether it was domestic or otherwise, in West Hartford homes. And I say this because I've had family members who did this. And it's funny because when you talk about Caribbean people, they don't just do one job, they do many jobs. They do their day job, they do their weekend job, and then they do another job after the day job. And many of them did this during this time, and they did that because they wanted to build their wealth at that time. So it didn't matter what they did, they had pride in what they were doing, and they learned from their employers in terms of how to build a business, how to buy a home, how to buy multiple homes, how to buy investment property. And then they pass that on to their children. And what I've learned over the years is that how do we keep that going for the generations that follow? How do we educate them about our history? Because it gets lost, right? And then over a period of time, we become a population or a generation that don't know its history. If we don't know our history, how can we move forward and leave a legacy behind? So we felt it was important to create a committee and to celebrate. The last year, what we did was we showed a film in the library about the building of the Panama Canal. And it was very interesting about many of the lives that were lost, the impact of the United States government,
Many of the natural disasters that occurred and affected the men that were building this canal, and the amount of money that they were paid, but how the U.S. enriched themselves on the back, right? We don't hear about these things in our school districts. And I'm not faulting it because we are getting better, all right? But we still have to have these platforms where we're able to share these types of history and information. And Chris, you talked about celebration. The one thing that rings true in this culture is we work hard, but we also celebrate hard. I know many of you know about the West Indian Parade. I marched in that parade when the West Indian Club was on Barber Street. And we're talking about 50 years or so ago. That parade was the first black parade in Connecticut. That's historical. And not only is it historical, it's because the parade route was through the black community. That was never done before. It was created and coordinated by Caribbean people. And it wasn't just Jamaican, it was the entire Caribbean diaspora. And from that, the members of the West Indian Club started off with a house, and then they again bought property on Main Street and built that up into a larger venue. So I say that because of the number of contributions that the Caribbean people have just made here in Connecticut, right? I'm not even going to talk about nationwide, but that puts us on the map. And the relationship between Hartford residents and West Hartford residents is not anything new. It goes hand in hand. And I'm sure many of you sitting here may know of relatives or friends or neighbors that were part of what I'm talking about. So that is what our celebration celebrates. It celebrates our history, our talent, our contribution, and many fields that we all bring to the table and share with one another, because we are one big happy family, whether we'd like to admit that or not.
Thank you so much for that, Carol. Yeah. With respect to time, I want to give everybody an opportunity to talk a little bit about, because we shared a lot about that connective tissue I mentioned earlier. Now, how do we use that to go forward? What do you see us as needing in West Hartford, and how do we go from where we are right now to where we need to be? Judy, I'll start with you.
I think the first thing is to communicate to the young and to those who are busy and think they don't have time that your voice matters, every vote counts. Please understand who you're voting for, what you're voting for, why you're voting. I was at an event at University of Hartford, or UConn, for Black History, and they had a young person speaking there, and they were talking more about Instagram than about, voting for those things and likes, than thinking about what's going to form your future, what's going to impact where you can live and how much money you make and what services you have available, and if you have a retirement, and all of those things, the economic growth of our country. But if people don't take a moment to think, how can I get involved, or how can I support someone who wants to get involved? Because let me tell you, running for office is not for the faint of heart. I was so happy to serve, but when they told me I had to run, Lisa's looking, all of us know, it is a journey that if you don't have support, and when I looked around the room when I started running, there wasn't anyone who looked like me. I had a lot of allies. Chuck Horsey, who left the room, was my first treasurer. How fortunate was I to have people come alongside and say, your voice matters, we want to support you, but I'd love to see more of us in that room and more of us working for the things that we say that we want to change, because all of us, we can't do the work all by ourselves, and the youth and their voice matters. Help educate them, help support them, help encourage them to get involved and do the little things. Volunteer somewhere. What can you do? Stuff an envelope, make a phone call? It matters.
Did anyone want to add anything, or?
What I would also just like to piggyback off of Judy, when, especially now, right, and I think many of us looking at the crowd, we're all adults, but usually you get started when you're a young person, like Judy said, whether stuff in envelopes, and usually you're tagging along with a parent or a relative or what have you, and you usually don't want to go. But I think now is so important, more important now than ever, to bring a young person along, and not even just our relatives, right? Maybe a neighbor, okay? Maybe someone in church. You know, I think it's so easy now that everybody is attached to their devices and they're on social media, whereas back in the day, we didn't have that. So you were more open to get involved in civic engagement or community outreach or working for a particular leader or politician or nonprofit. I think we need to get back to that. I think we need to begin to start putting our devices down and talking to people and encouraging our young people to do the same.
Right on with youth. I'm actually got to jet out of here and go to Bristow for some projects we're working on with them. But I do want to leave my closing statement as Juneteenth is coming up in June. Every year, it is scraping pennies together to make this incredible event happen for the town. And with so many wonderful, powerful people in this room, my request as a closing statement is to support Adrian and the team and help us really have the best Juneteenth we've ever had this year. Because it's a lot of stress and a lot of work with a small handful of people to make it happen. So that's what I got to say.
I'll be very brief because we're running out of time. When I started my organization, Concerned Parents of Color West Hartford, my tagline was, I don't expect you to move mountains, but I expect you to pick up your rock. And that is so important. Everything is so overwhelming. Everything seems so big. But whatever you have the capacity for, it moves the mountain. It changes the trajectory of our communities. So when you're thinking about it, thinking, I don't have time, when you have 15 minutes to make phone calls or talk to somebody, say hello, those things matter. Because we're in a time where it feels like every day is chaos. It feels like when you turn your TV on, you want to turn it right back off. So take the time to get to know your neighbors, your community, your elected officials. And like I said, it's not about moving the mountain. It really is about you picking up your rock. Thank you.
Wow. So, firstly, I want to thank all of you. Matt, Adrian, Judy, Carol, thank you. And Tammy who had to run off and take care of government business. Thank you all. The common thread that you heard, because there's a lot of connective tissue, as I said. Community. Community is at the core of everything that we do. And nothing gets done without community. So, thank you for all that you've done to make this community better. Thank you for being aspirational and an inspiration to the people who are coming behind you. Because as I said, you got to see a thing in order to be a thing, and you guys are creating that visibility for that next generation. And hell, for your compatriots and colleagues, so thank you. And I think one of the other things, and the last thing I want to touch on, is each one teach one. And people who have been around the Minority Business Network for any amount of time have heard me say this, that we are all responsible for bringing somebody to the party. And if you listen to all of our panelists today, in some way, shape, or form, they've put that in front of you. You know, I said it to someone earlier today, you can't ask for a seat at the table if you don't know that the building is there. So it's our job to hold people by the hand and bring them to the party and let them know about the amazing things that are happening in our community of West Hartford and with the West Hartford Chamber and the Minority Business Network. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you once again for everything that you all do. I genuinely appreciate you, and I'm sure everyone else does.
So I'd like to thank Chris and our panel. This was absolutely incredible. As I mentioned, when you're planning something like this, it takes sponsors, it takes a venue change, it takes a committee, it takes a town staff, and this definitely exceeded expectations. I do just want to touch on a couple of things Chris just mentioned. Toward the back as you exit, there's a table of resources. There's information about the chamber, specifically the Minority Business Network. Also, Tracy Flater's still here. Mountaintops is at the Playhouse. It's the last, it takes place the night before Dr. King's assassination. Very powerful play that they'll be having this weekend. Chris and Stephen King Jr. will be at the Black Business Expo, which will be at Town Hall Saturday from 1 to 4, I believe. So there's a lot going on. Also, this event was very conversational, and that's kind of the model we're moving forward with. The state of the town is coming up, and that will also now be a conversation. So that will be April 15th. It will be at the Mandel JCC. And Chuck Corsi, who did have to leave, it got a lot of shout outs today. Chuck will be moderating a conversation with Mayor Sherry Cantor and with Town Manager Rick Ledwith. So there's a lot going on. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you to the Minority Business Network for your leadership in bringing this all together. And thank you again to our panelists.
I was like, that's the line of day.
I just like